But to move to the Flash, it was an interesting episode.
You could say that. I feel like this is going to be the episode that divides the spiral. um, I have to ask. No, actually, no. I'll give a brief bit of background first. So, this is the start of the final interlude. Or no, the interlude's over. This is the start of the final chapter. So we're doing a four-parter, a new world, part 1, 2, 3, and 4. This was obviously part 1. And Reed, how familiar are you with the Flash? You did see some of the first season, didn't you?
Yeah, I watched like maybe 8 episodes, but that was almost 10 years ago. I don't remember a thing.
Long story short, obviously the Barry becomes the Flash because the Reverse Flash killed his mom back in the year 2000, and he tried to kill baby Barry, but adult Flash swooped him out of there in time, because time travel, folks. That's how time travel works. But somehow in this episode, Barry Allen ended up back in the year 2000, and he got to spend a day with his mom and dad. He also crossed paths with the Reverse Flash, played by Matt Lester, not the Tom Cavanagh version, because the Reverse Flash was on his way to kill young Barry because it was March 18th, 2000. This was the day his parents died. And something's wrong with Barry that he can't get out. He tried to travel through time, but his connection to the Speed Force is gone. He can still swoop around the city, but he can't travel through time anymore. And yeah, there's a lot of emotional movement, very little costumes in this episode, which is why I liked it. It was also very nostalgic, and it felt like a season 1 episode. Maybe not as tight as a season 1 episode, but it felt like a season 1 episode. There was so much nostalgia, and I know Sabrina is nodding at me, so I want to see why. Go on, pop off.
Okay, it was nostalgic. That's not like the part that bothered me. I think it is the writing around it. It's not as tight as a season 1 episode. I think it had. Does everyone expect for us to go back to the night Nora died in the final season of The Flash? Yes, it's actually something I think everyone in the fandom was waiting for, because you have to do it one last time, and this was the one last time. The beginning part to how we get there didn't really gel with me. I think it is because we're acting in a capacity that like a doctor wouldn't do. Like, so I mean, as comedic as the show can be, the fact that like Barry's mom is popping in on him after he got like hit by the car, and his dad's allowing her to weigh in on like what's best medically for him. And she's like, what he needs is food. I was like, can they have just been like a family on the street and not taken him to the hospital? It made more sense if they were going to do that for it to be in the house. But I get it. It's an opportunity for Barry to be with his parents one last time, even though we did this at Flashpoint, and Flashpoint did it better. I think I wouldn't have been bothered so much if he didn't have a line about how he'd always imagined what it would be like. And I was like, well, we didn't always imagine what it would be like, because you decided at the end of season 2 that you were going to give up the life that you had and run back to the past and save your mom. That's how you found out it was a fixed point in time, because you created Flashpoint. And then you had to sacrifice the joy that you'd found in order to bring everything back. So that speech, as lovely as it was acted, as great to me as it was to have him there with his parents, I was like, but can we have done it in a way that didn't completely, to me, forget about the whole thing he went through in season 3?
Yeah, I understand. And I feel like this is also an issue with how the Flash has played out over the years. We knew they were going to go back to that night at the end of the show. So why did we feel the need to go back to that night so many times in the middle of the show as well? Maybe that's the issue. And obviously, I agree, some of the middle episodes did it better. But it doesn't change the fact that I definitely got goosebumps when the whole Reverse Flash thing happened at the end of the episode. I was like, oh, it's happening. We're finally going back here. And I've not felt like that about a Flash episode in about 3 or 4 years. So that was definitely a bonus. The nostalgia, I think, was my favorite part of it, because for the first time, Oliver aside, for the first time, this felt like the final season of The Flash, and we should not be doing this in the final 4 episodes. In the first 15 minutes alone, we got Eddie Thawne back, we got Henry and Nora Allen back, we got Matt Lester's Reverse Flash back, we got the voice of Victor Garber back as Professor Stein. There was so much nostalgia in those first 15 minutes. We were in the year 2000. We saw people with Walkmans like they did in the year 2000. There was so much throwback, and there was old Flash music as well, which the show has not done in years. This, to me, felt like where the Flash's final season should have started, and that's not good for with only 4 episodes to go. But the first 5 minutes of the episode, when we were still in the present, and apparently there's been a time jump because Iris is now heavily pregnant, and Chester and Allegra are
Michael just looked so exasperated. It's so funny.
Why does everything with Chester and Allegra have to be so bad? They were in the episode for one scene, and so Chester's trying to make Allegra a suit because she's worried about her identity being revealed, because she is super powerful. She's like Captain Marvel, but the show has not dealt with that, and she gets stuck with these stupid corny storylines. So he decided to make her a costume that was basically a big Undertaker-like trench coat, but with rainbows on it, and goggles that also shined. And she thought it was horrible because she didn't want to draw this much attention to herself. And also, every superhero suit is like leather or shiny. Why does she wear in a dry coat when literally her powers are ultraviolet and could probably set it on fire? Don't know what the logic is here. She hated the outfit and agreed, so did I. It was horrible. But Chester's supposed to be a genius. Why would he have done this? Apparently he spent weeks working on it, and Allegra hated it, and he was so upset that Allegra hated it, but it was okay because they love each other and they were going to go back and help her take the coat off, if you know what that means. And I was like, okay, get them off screen. Get them off screen. And that was the only time we seen them in the episode, so that was fun. Glad that was that. Cecile and Joe, Cecile's out in the country meeting Joe on the weekends, so Joe was back. That did not look like country house, absolutely not. But like, so we got some movement. Also, Keown's powers. She is like, yes, Scarlet Witch. My only issue is we spent like 10 episodes of her like, let's go meditate, and then used the time jump to have her become this superpower, superpower thing. And she's writing letters to Caitlin and Frost, even though the two of them are dead. And she wants to write. The person she really wants to speak to is Chilblain. So I'm like, wait, is Keown actually in love with Chilblain now? I don't know where we're going with this. Also, Chilblain is a series regular this season, and they wrote that man out twice. So why was he a series regular? There's only 13 episodes, people. But yeah, I had to get my little current Flash rant in before we talk about the actual beauty of the real episode. So yeah, what did you think of the opening intro, Sabrina?
They could have kept it on the cutting room floor. Like it adds nothing. It felt like one of those things where, you know, if this had been the actual start of the season, that's what you would have done. We would have had 5 minutes of catching up with everybody. And that's essentially what they did. But we didn't need to do that because we are in the last 4 episodes of the season. So we don't need to catch up in that way. I thought it was, I wish Jesse L. Martin had actually been able to be in the Barry's birthday episode, because it was better use of his time, I would think, for him to be in that episode than for him to be making breakfast. Was he making breakfast in the kitchen? And Cecile, trying to get Cecile to stay instead of going to the city for the weekend or something. I lost track of their conversation because I was like, I don't know what this adds. And we have a whole new set that we're probably not going to see again. So that was throwing me. But all of this is to say that, like, really it was just to let us know it's been 9 months and Iris is about to, she's, I guess, days, maybe a week or so away from giving birth. I don't really know what he was Barry is baby proofing the house with dampeners, which was interesting because considering what Nora was upset about, the first Nora was upset about, I was like, well, can we linger in this conversation a little bit? I mean, it makes sense. You know, if she gets powers when she's a toddler, they're going to need to dampen her so she's not toddling and then zooming right into a wall and hurting herself. But I was like, oh, the dampener conversation is fun. Let's stay here. And then he disappeared. I was like, well, the real plot is starting. I thought we were going to come between where he was and the present. And that's not what happened. which I think was fine actually. Which, by the way, Michael, I don't think we're as divided as you might think. I have qualms, but it's an okay episode. I just have major qualms with it. I think, where was I going to go with this? To go back into the meat of the story in the 2000s and to jump towards the end, my favorite part is actually the zoom through the house and back out into the street. I was trying to figure out why Barry was apologizing to Thawne. Reed, I don't know if you remember from, when you did watch the show, but Thawne's angry that when he developed his powers, when he finally was able to use them, he was going to save a crowd, and then Barry saved them instead. And that is his villain origin story. Such a narcissistic villain origin story. But it's the reason for why he wants to kill little Barry. But I actually thought, like, we finally got a stronger reason for why Thawne should want to kill Barry towards the end of the episode. When Barry apologizes, lets him go through the whole scenario that he knows is a fixed point so that he can land in the part where he can't get back to his own time. And Barry did that knowingly. And I was like, yes, villain Barry, because that is the best origin for why Thawne is the way he is. You let me do this thing. You even let me kill your mom, which, wow, dark. So that I can't go back in time to my time. And because that's the way it's supposed to be. It was a very dark moment that they just let Barry have, and then he went on.
He's like, bye, peace. One thing I have to say that really gave me goosebumps, and it really made me feel like a full circle moment. And so, yes, Reed, the pilot of The Flash, obviously, the reason The Flash is born is because Thawne went back in time and killed Barry's mom. But while he did that, a future version of Barry tried to stop Thawne. So baby Barry was standing there in a room watching these two speedsters go around in circles. And then adult Barry swooped baby Barry out of the room. In the season 1 finale, because Barry was young, he thought he could change the timeline. So he went back to save his mom. And as he went in as the Flash to try to save his mom, the adult Flash that was there turned around and went, as in, you can't do that. And then that's when Barry realized he could never save his mom. Flash forward 9 years later, the adult Barry that turns around to time traveling Barry, like, is the current Barry. So we've reached that point in the story where it started as Barry was trying to save his mom. At 9 seasons later, he's finally become the one that went back in time to be like, you can't do this. It has to stay as it was. What a moment of growth for Barry. And you always thought, how could Barry Allen, who loves his parents so much, be like, no, you have to let her die? And after that day he lived in 2000, we finally seen that. It was such a full circle moment. I knew we were going to see the fight between Thawne and the Flash again, but I didn't expect to see that Barry became the future Flash in that scene, in that moment. That was an incredible moment. And I feel like we had to deal with that before the end of the season. So the episode had its flaws, but I feel like we finally reached Flash level storytelling again, and it's been a very long time since we've been there.
I think, okay, I need your help with I guess that's Cobalt Blue. I don't know. But the whole blue-eyed thing, the voice over they were doing was actually quite heavy. So at points I couldn't understand what he was trying to say to Barry. Why is he here?
We don't know yet. But the thing is, we all watched the season 8 finale. So Barry, the present version of the Reverse Flash that was played by Tom Cavanagh, was wiped out of existence, which means that the negative Speed Force needs an avatar. And Barry is obviously the avatar for the positive Speed Force. The negative Speed Force cannot exist without an avatar. Thawne was its avatar, and Thawne was finally forever wiped from existence whenever he went up into the sky in the black suit and evaporated in the storm, or whatever the hell that was. But it was a bad finale. So I don't know what Cobalt Blue has got to do with the negative Speed Force, because we're really going around in circles here. But the episode opened with Eddie Thawne. You remember Eddie, Reed? He was Iris's love interest in the first season, and then he died.
The blonde cop.
Yeah, exactly. He's so obviously, given the surname, he's a far out ancestor of the Reverse Flash because his name's Thawne. But he was supposed to amount to nothing. But anyway, Eddie was a cop. But when we were introduced to this version of Eddie at the start of this episode, and that he's a doctor, and then we don't see him again for the rest of the episode. But at the end of the episode, there's after Barry deals with whatever it is holding that blue diamond, obviously. So the blue diamond infected Joe West. the Joe West in the 2000s, not the current one, because Barry was trapped there, and said that the negative Speed Force needs a new avatar. You stole the avatar of our negative Speed Force. So as a result, we're going to wipe out you because you're the avatar of the positive Speed Force. But it didn't work. Barry managed to save 2000s Joe, and the blue, whatever it is, medallion, diamond, whatever, fell out of Joe. It was no longer possessing him. And when Barry went to grab it, it disappeared. However, then we cut to the end of the episode and we're back at this alternate version of Eddie Thawne working in his lab. And just like what happened to Barry in the very first episode of The Flash, lightning struck, all the concoctions in the lab rose for a moment, time stood still, and red lightning struck Eddie. And then he woke up and he was fine. And he saw a newspaper that said, was it Detective Eddie Thawne died? And he looks and was like, who's Detective Eddie Thawne? So his name's not Eddie Thawne. And he was struck by what we think is the negative Speed Force. So for the longest time, everyone was hoping that Eddie Thawne would actually have been the comic book character Malcolm Thawne, who apparently was Barry Allen's twin brother, who was something happened. A doctor stole him at birth, and he never grew up with his own parents, and so he was always jealous that Barry stole his life, even though he was his twin brother. Like, how does your twin steal your life? The two of you should have been living that life together. But anyway, he becomes the villain known as Cobalt Blue, and he's controlled by a blue medallion that lets him harness the power of the Speed Force or something like that. I don't know. And he becomes one of the Flash's arch rivals. 9 seasons. Eddie Thawne died in season 1. That never happened. Now it looks like whatever this, the fact that this blue diamond needs an avatar for the negative Speed Force, and an Eddie Thawne from what appears to be an alternate timeline on an alternate Earth was struck by the negative Speed Force that is controlled by a blue diamond, makes us very much think that finally, after 9 seasons, Eddie is going to become Malcolm Thawne, aka Cobalt Blue. I wish they had more than 4 episodes to deal with this, but it's very exciting that I think that was the only storyline in the whole of the Flash's 9-season run that never checked that box of ones that fans wanted to say. So the fact we're going to get to see it's quite exciting. No idea what it means. I probably just said a lot of mumbo jumbo that didn't make sense, but
I mean, it was a lot of information. It sounded like it made sense.
It did sound like it made sense, yeah.
Very exciting nonetheless. But before we move on, my one concern about next week's episode is Sabrina said that this episode did not stay in the present, which means no more Iris, no more Chester and Allegra, no more Cecile, no more Current Joe. As soon as we moved to the 2000s, we didn't see any of them again. The promo for next week looks like it's only set in the present, which means we're going to have modern day Flash again, and Chester and Allegra running around thinking, how do we find Barry? And no doubt Cecile trying to get vibes as to how to find Barry. And I'm like, after such a high standard nostalgic episode, I'm not sure we need an episode set totally in the present without Barry Allen. I hope the promo was misleading, we'll say. But as far as the Flash's final storyline goes, it's off to a strong start for me.
Mm-hmm. I want Iris to be the lead of the next episode, though.
I would like that.
I don't care if they need to prop her feet up and hand her drink. She delegates, but she needs to be the lead of that episode to really bring it home. I just feel like the OCs should not be in charge. So fingers crossed that is not going to be the case.